All right, what's up, everybody? It's Jake here. I'm just coming in with a quick video to talk about the Season 9 changes and how I think they should affect the way you think about Overwatch, the way you approach the game. These changes are really, really massive. So here's the ones that dropped with the start of Season 9. There's a lot of numbers here, but essentially the way you should think about all these changes is that every shot in the game is now easier to hit. So the hit scan shots are more forgiving, projectiles are bigger and easier to connect with, same for tracking weapons, and they're all adjusted slightly different from one another. But ultimately, I didn't feel like playing this patch that much that there's a big difference between the different damage types. Just all damage feels more consistent to land, more like when you're a support shooting your teammates, there's a little bit of favorable hitboxes there. It feels a little bit more similar now when you're playing anything that shoots damage at the enemy team. So a lot of damage is going to be more consistent, especially for high level players who might have been missing by a small margin in the past. Now they'll be hitting more and more shots. And so we'll really see much more consistent damage output. But of course, to balance that, there is a combined hero HP buff to all heroes in the game. So the squishiest heroes in the game get 25 HP, middleweight 50, and then tanks from 75 to 100. Which is really massive also, because what this change, you should really think about these changes collectively, right? Like there's no point looking at one or the other in isolation. These really are two sides of the same coin. And what this is going to do is mean that time to kill should be relatively similar to what it was before, since the damage is going to come in more consistently. There's a little bit more health. Okay, those two things are going to balance out. The crucial difference here in terms of how this changes the game, number one, is in terms of removing breakpoints. There are very few breakpoints now in Overwatch, especially on DPS, where very few like two-shot combos that don't involve headshots. Tons and tons of heroes that relied on hitting that sort of like 1-2 punch combo, like Junkrat, are now drastically weaker. He just can no longer insta-kill with a combo on almost any hero in the game, which is really significant. So removing a lot of these breakpoints changes a lot of heroes, the way that they're played. Instead of looking for those breakpoints, you're now playing more about efficiency. And this is, I think, the overall change that I really want to impress upon people, especially with the DPS passive, because heals did not get buffed, guys. Like the ability for hitting heal shots didn't get changed. The hitboxes might have been affected on certain heroes, but the teammate heal hitboxes, when you're a support shooting your teammate to heal them, those are already very large and already very favorable to your team, and so you're already going to hit a very high percentage of those shots. Now the damage is going to be on more equal footing, and so when you're playing tank and you're wondering why you can't get healed up, this is why. The damage is coming in faster than before, and even though you have a bigger HP pool, right? You have a larger total base of HP, so you're not going to get killed as easily. When it comes to the process of taking damage and getting healing throughout the course of a long fight, how much damage do you block with your shields and your mitigation? How much damage do you take? And how much are you getting healed over time, right? So that'll tell you whether your health is going up or down. And of course, this has only been changed negatively. You have a bigger total health pool, but the ability for the enemy to overwhelm that health pool over time is now significantly better than before. So the entire concept of playing tank and expecting to get just like infinite heals spammed into you and be able to tank through oncoming damage, that is now much less realistic than it was before. On top of that, we've got the damage roll passive, which is maybe even more significant. I'd say they're equal in significance from my perspective, but they're very important, which is that taking damage from DPS heroes is going to reduce the healing received on the heroes that just took damage for 2 seconds. And so if you're certain tanks who take a lot of damage from DPS at all times, I'm thinking Orisa, Junker Queen, Roadhog, that don't really have a shield, don't really have a way to like stop incoming damage. They're just going to kind of tank it on their health bar. They're going to be basically permanently healing for 20% less, unless you're full hiding for 2 seconds to get full healed. So you got to be more aware nowadays about, especially on tank, if you're taking a ton of damage, you need to like find cover and restore your HP pool. You can't expect your supports to just outdo the enemy DPS in terms of that trade of heals versus damage. And so I think this has led a lot of people to get frustrated, especially on tank and support, feeling like they can't do enough to keep people alive through the oncoming damage. Because now the crucial factor is not just healing enough, focusing all your heals on the tank and then they can't die. Now you need to actually avoid taking damage in certain situations. You need to actually be on a tank and on a hero comp that overall trades efficiently. If you're relying on getting 1,000 heals per second from BAP and Brig to be able to play a hero like Roadhog, let's say, or to be able to like run in super aggressively on any tank really, that is no longer going to be as effective because those incoming heals are just going to be 20% worse from the DPS passive. You're going to be taking more damage per second on average from all this buffs to the damage. And you're not really going to be getting any more healing because the heal projectiles aren't really affected. Not nearly as much. And much of the healing in the game is not projectile based, not even aim based. So really, this is a huge change. Every hero now having the passive regen further pushes you, I think, guys, to be more careful about your own HP. I really don't think you're going to use the passive health regen on every hero all that often. Like certain tanks, you just can't be out of the fight for 5 seconds. You want to keep fighting as much as you possibly can. But it's really something worth thinking about when your team now is overall dropping low. Like that, I want you to think about the patch as a whole, guys. You can't just think about one part of it at a time. As a whole, if your tank takes 300, 400 damage, gets really low, and has to run out, your supports might need to focus all the heals on them for even longer than before. And so you as a DPS player, you might need to grab a pack in that circumstance, or you might need to avoid taking damage and get heal from this passive for all heroes, get the regen from it. So you want to be aware that you need to be more efficient with your health bars than you were before. Even though there's more health on the health bar and you might think that means you can be more aggressive, I think the opposite is actually true. You need to be more cautious with your resources, and it's even more important than it was before to play a comp that works together well. If you have one person who doesn't fit in with the comp, often they need more resources than normal to be able to play effectively. Like if you're playing a dive comp, and you've got a DPS who like can't defend themselves, they're going to need supports to keep them alive. Whereas if you were to play like a full dive comp with 2 flankers, or maybe if you did play a hit scan, you chose a hero like Soldier or Sojourn who can kind of get away from trouble without too much help, then you'd have more resources overall for your team. We're also seeing at the high level heroes like Lucio and Zen looking very strong, even together, which hasn't been true for many years in Overwatch because historically having more healing was just better. In this current patch, it's not about just like raw healing. The best supports, in my view, are the ones that are active on the map, doing things aggressively to the enemy team versus just relying completely on healing and enabling their teammates. Some of the heroes that really relied on tanking with their health bar before, so I'm thinking especially stuff like Roadhog, is drastically weaker than before. Roadhog's basically always going to heal, like his own native heal on his hero is now worse than before because you're taking reduced healing from the DPS passive. And more than that, all these heroes are going to take more and more damage. So you need to be on a hero who not just survives the oncoming damage, but is actually pressuring the enemy, slowing them down. You need to stop them from dealing damage rather than just take all their damage and try to power through it. And so I think the game has become more about team focus fire, number one, since larger health pools means it's better to have multiple players focusing down targets, killing them through their larger health pool, less reliant on solo kills, individual breakpoints, individual pop-offs. Very few heroes now can realistically solo kill all that often. It'll be more and more rare. And certain heroes now are going to be significantly worse. Heroes that relied on healing and relied on getting a ton of health poured into them from supports with high heal output support comps. That's not going to be nearly as good as it was before since the DPS passive is always available. In the past, anti-nade would punish it, but something like Kiriko could counter anti-nade, and maybe you get away with just mass healing on one target. But now with the DPS passive, you can't cleanse it, you can't take it off, and so people are just always going to be taking 20% less. You need to think about the game, especially on support and tank, less in terms of how much healing can I get, how much healing can I output to the team, and more in terms of how do I stop the oncoming damage coming in. Does that mean get into cover? Does that mean do I play more aggressively and kill off the enemy before they can damage me? Do I need to like hide and go for set plays with my team when we're all ready? These are all questions you need to think about asking yourself now, which for me is actually a really great sign for Overwatch. I think this is a very healthy patch for the game because I think that core consideration that, okay, I need to be careful with my health. I need to be careful with my resources. This is Overwatch. This is really arena shooters in a nutshell, guys, is that resource management game matters. It's crucially important. You can't just expect to get healed through any amount of incoming damage. And so I think the patch is going to be here to stay. I doubt they're going to be walking it back too much. A few days ago, they dropped some adjustments to certain heroes, taking down some of the heroes that were, so Roadhog was really weak. They buffed him a little bit. These changes are all, I would say, pretty marginal. Nothing like super crazy. Some of the heroes were too strong and they got nerfed. Others too weak, getting little buffs. But to be honest, there's not massive changes here. And so I think overall, that core idea that the theme of the game has changed to just standing and delivering and waiting for your one-shot heroes to get kills to now it's about playing on cover, playing on the like thinking about the objective. Do you even need to be out in the open if they're not contesting the objective? You need to be thinking about the game from a resource management perspective. Do I need to grab packs? Do I need to go get the passive regen for a few seconds to get back to full if my team is low on resources? So you got to be a little bit more aware of your team's overall resource count and a little bit more careful with it, like more reluctant to expend your resources until you're really ready to go. This also means, I think, that it's even more important that you play team comps which are thematically aligned. So if you're going to play some aggressive rush comp with tons of AoE healing and enabling, you really only want to have heroes that actually play together in that AoE. If you have one hero who's far away, who's going to need heals from Baptiste, that's really going to hurt Baptiste's efficiency. It's much easier to play when Bap and Lucio are just like right on top of their whole team. Very easy to keep everybody alive and get a ton of value. Same for dive comp. If you're going to play dive, you want everyone to be a little bit self-sufficient, everyone to have a little bit of flexibility as far as keeping their health bar up, because you might not have that much heals to give as the game goes on, as the fight goes on. You need to stay on the aggressive and always be catching the enemy. And so if you've got some slower heroes who can't really do that and are getting punished, your dive comp could start to look really, really weak. But I think it matters on every comp in every position, guys. Being more cautious with the overall resource count of the team and knowing when, if your resources are low, maybe you need to fall back earlier, like before even losing a player, right? If people are too low and they can't fight, you might need to just back off, grab health packs, give your supports a few more seconds to heal everybody up, and then re-engage at full strength. Might be a better option for you now that dropping low, and it could be really dangerous for you, right? It's not so easy to get healed back to full, especially with the DPS passive and the increased oncoming damage. So I hope this helps, guys. This is my overview of the Season 9 patch notes, the way I think you should change your approach to the game based on the new patch. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.